Yes, there is a Q&A box as well. So as we go through this, obviously, if you have questions or anything, you can always pop in the Q&A. I'll kind of be watching over that, but without further ado, we'll go to David. So you're good.
We're live.
We're ready.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate you being here. My name is David Parker, and I'm joined by my colleague Dustin Douglas from Solarc. We are traveling from Texas out here to California. Super happy to be hosted by Renee Donaldson and her team at EcoDirect. We're coming at you live from EcoDirect in Carlsbad, California. So thank you very much for being here. We're going to go over some training today of Solarc products, our existing products that we've had out in the marketplace for a while now, and some of the exciting new products that we're going to be launching as we roll into 2022. So thank you very much for being here. Without any further ado, I guess we'll get started. Our mission at Solarc is very simple. We want to make reliable, innovative, affordable energy storage solutions for families and their businesses. That's what we're all about. We were started by some veterans, and I'll show in the next slide a little bit of a history of the company. The company was started in 2013 in Texas. It was started by some veterans of the military that had deep experience in power electronics, semiconductors, etc. And the story goes like this. There was a group of friends together, and some of the friends wanted to have an energy storage solution. They wanted an inverter to be able to elegantly and efficiently manage a PV system and batteries to be able to run their home. And so they challenged Tom Brennan, who's our founder and CEO, to kind of go find them something out in the marketplace. And Tom, on a whim, just kind of said to him, he goes, okay, I'll go find you one. And if I can't find it, I'll build it. Well, the rest is history. He was looking around back in 2013, and he could not find anything that did what he wanted it to do. So he followed through with his word and started a company and built the first Solarc inverter. That was back in 2013. In 2017, we learned a lot through those first few years, came out with the 8K, was a transformerless hybrid inverter. Really took the market by storm. It was new, exciting. It was a great design. That product got a lot of momentum. As that went into 2019, we got a lot of feedback from the marketplace during those years that said, hey, we want something bigger. We want to run more stuff. So we went from the 8K to the 12K. The 12K became stackable, where you could parallel the 12K. It does perform multiple grid frequencies at both 50 and 60 hertz. It performs multiple service voltages, 220 single phase, 120 240 split phase, and 120 208 volt three phase. So it's a very, very versatile unit that was able to handle a lot of different applications in a lot of different circumstances. The 12K took off like gangbusters. It was selling really well. We got a lot of momentum. In 2019, we went to some of the financing companies. We wanted to make sure that Solarc was pre-approved from a hardware perspective when somebody was wanting to get a financing package to pay for their system. So we rolled into 2022, and that's when we changed the case on the 12K. Everything we ship now is NEMA 3R. So we kind of got rid of the indoor-outdoor in 2020. We said everything's outdoor. It's all NEMA 3R. 2020 was a great year. The 12K was really going strong. In 2021, last year was very exciting. We moved out of our existing facility that we grew up in, Parker, Texas. It was about, what was it, Dustin? About 18,000 square feet? 13?
I would say 13.
13. Yeah. It was about 13,000 square feet in Parker, Texas. Kind of a hodgepodge of little buildings in this one compound that we'd sort of taken over as we grew. It served us very well, but it was not serving us as we really started to grow. So we bit the bullet and moved into a 95,000 square foot in Plano, Texas. That's got lots of room in it. We're there today. We've got a training center, battery labs, a huge production area, big shipping area, lots and lots of offices. So we're really poised for growth in terms of our facilities. We also in 2021 were nominated for the Dallas 100, which is hot 100 companies in Dallas, Texas, which is not a small market. And we came in number 10. So we were number 10 out of the 100 fastest growing companies in DFW area. We're super happy about that. We continue to have zero debt. We're privately held, privately funded, and we've had nothing but organic growth. We don't do any advertising, and we haven't bought any other companies. So far, everything has been just on our own efforts, our own technology, and our own customer service, really. So as we're going into 2022, we are really happy. So now we're really going to stop on the gas pedal. We've got a big new building. We've got a growing team. We got a lot of momentum. So we're going to announce some new products. Specifically, we're going to announce a smart load 14 panel, 100 amp circuit smart load panel. And we're going to announce a new inverter. We have a 15 kilowatt inverter coming out. It's the SolArc 15K. Very happy to say that that's 15,000 watts of continuous AC power. And we also have micro inverters coming out. Yes, for those of you who heard me, I said that right. We have micro inverters coming out. We have the M1000, which is a 2-channel, and the M2000, which is a 4-channel micro. We also will continue taking advantage of the trend in the utility space, which is VPP programs. VPP stands for Virtual Power Plant, where a utility company can sign up customers in their area if they have energy storage systems, and they can, communicate, view those energy storage systems, and then aggregate them in the cloud. So if you had 1,000 customers and everybody had 10 kilowatt hours of energy storage, 1,000 times 10 kilowatt hours of energy storage, you got a big battery in the cloud, and you can go in and potentially take some of those electrons from their battery when the grid is in need. And when that happens, there's a compensation event, and the customer gets paid for those electrons. So it's exciting. It helps the grid, it helps the customer, and it's one more way for the American family homeowners or business owners to directly participate in the energy markets with their energy system. It's really cool. Makes you like a power plant. You can sell electricity to the grid and to your neighbors when the grid is in time of need.
And this is especially going to be very important as we start to see net metering and things like that go out the door. There's not a lot of places nowadays offering one-for-one net metering. So this has another opportunity for the homeowner, business owner to really be involved.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dustin. That's a great point. I'm here with Renee Donaldson and her team, and we were just talking about the CALSA efforts here in California with net metering. So it makes Dustin's point even a better one. As policy may or may not be there, or may shift out from under you, or over time it morphs. This is one more way to try and protect an ROI for somebody to open up as many possible revenue streams as possible. Yep. So this, all right, the slide you're looking at is really cool. The slide you're looking at is the compound that we grew up in Parker, Texas. The very end of the first building in the lower left-hand corner, that was a workout gym. So we had most of that building except for the end where they had this workout facility, and they were always carrying these kettle weights up and down the parking lot. But the two buildings on the other end, the Quonset hut buildings, the silver ones, those are actually old military-grade Quonset huts, really cool. But as you can see, it was kind of an industrial yard type business. And those buildings that are inside the footprint there are what we had, minus the whole yard stuff. That's not our stuff. Those are rocks or whatever. But the outline that you see is our new building in Plano. So that white outline is 95,000 square feet. It's got a big battery lab, a huge production area, a huge shipping area. We've got a training area in there for installer companies, all kinds of stuff. And the big strip along the front of the building is all offices. We've got lots and lots of offices, R&D labs, et cetera. So very much poised for growth for 2022. And we are at 1100 Professional Drive in Plano, Texas. Very excited about that. So what customers want from a product like ours, what we started the company on and really been at it since 2013, is versatility, right? The customer wants an intelligent system that has PV input, has batteries connected to it, may or may not have a generator connected to it, and then of course has the grid. Most of the time the grid's there. It's great. It's the world's biggest, most expensive backup battery. So when all of that is there, the customers want this system to help them make money or help them save money. If they're going to save money, they're going to offset a kilowatt usage of their home by providing PV power. If they want to make money, they may sell power to the grid. If they want to make money, they may have a VPP program where they could let some of the electrons out of the battery if the grid needs it and be compensated for that. Now, all of that's when the grid is there. They want ways to interact with the grid, again, to either save them money actively or make them money actively. In addition to, it's all about, I hate to keep saying the words money, but it is, the ROI is important. At the end of the day, they want their appliances in the home to run as well. When the grid goes away, well, that's when the paycheck really starts to happen. Then our system still uses all of the assets connected to it, be that PV, batteries, and generator, to service the loads. If you add a smart load, which is not in this picture yet, it's one of our new products, we're really taking it to the next level. But what the systems want from an inverter like ours is functionality. They want it to work when they're connected to the grid. Again, save them money, make them money, and then they want it to work when the grid goes away so they can power, we can help power them through their life. Our SolArk moniker, if you will, our tagline is powering families through life. So when that grid in the upper right corner, for whatever reason, in whatever state, you got a snowstorm in Texas, you got some wildfires in California, you got whatever you got going on, boom, grid goes away. You want to have the autonomy and electricity and resiliency at your home to be able to continue operating your residence or your business. So that's what customers want, and that's certainly what SolArk's all about. We've been doing that since day one. One last thing I'll point out about this slide. One thing that we view is a strength of ours, and it's a philosophy that Tom put us on way back when, and we continue to be there to this day. We're agnostic. We don't want to trap anybody into anything. We want things as open-ended as possible. We want to put the homeowner, the business owner, in as much control as we can. So we don't care what solar panels you use. You can use any solar panel you want. There are some limitations. What we watch for is voltage open circuit on any given string. So when you're going back to your MPPT controllers and your stringing of your solar panels, there are some basic electrical considerations there. But other than that, we don't care if it's black panel, silver panel, white back sheet, if it's a Trina, it's a Jinko, it's a Hanwha Q-Cell, Mission Solar from Texas. We don't care, any panel. So carry that on to the battery, any battery. We don't care about the brand, we don't care about the type, and we don't care about the chemistry. And that's really good. Especially, think about this in the context of today's supply chain woes, right? You can't get ships in, and the ships are all queued up here in Long Beach. I'm in Long Beach. The ships are out in the ocean. I saw them when I flew in. I was literally counting them up from the plane. As near as I can tell, there's about 40 of them out there. So there's all kinds of issues with the supply chain. So you can, with the fact that you have strength to get any solar panel or any battery or any generator really leaves you flexibility. Who's going to give you a deal? Who's your favorite distributor carry? Who's your brother-in-law is going to come hook it up for you? You're in control, and we don't want to box you into any of this other gear. So same thing about the generator. Any 208, 240 generator, it just needs a 2-wire start kit. If it's the bigger generators, the Century Pros, Kohlers, Generac, whole home kind of thing, they're going to have a 2-wire start kit either built in or perhaps as an option. If it's one of the little ones, you got it from Harbor Freight. It's a little Yamaha or Honda you take with the RV and go camping with or whatever. You're going to want to get a 2-wire start kit. But with a 2-wire start kit, we can start any generator that's 208, 240. So the solar panels, the batteries, and the generators, we try to maintain agnostic position to give strength and versatility to everybody's decision making. Use whatever equipment with the SolArk you want to. There's two things. If anybody's ever heard me give a webinar, there's two things in SolArk that we do really well. We're Texans. We're smart, so we like to focus on the right stuff, but we like to keep it simple because we're Texans. So we really only focus on two things. What we try to bring to the world in a very high level context is best in class technology. And we think you'll see lots of that in this presentation, particularly with some of the new products we're coming up with. We walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to best in class technology. And the other thing that we do is world-class customer support. We answer our phone 7 days a week. We do webinars. We do outbound stuff. We fly 3 states away to go hang out with our distributors and hold webinars. We do all kinds of cool stuff. We outreach any way we can, and we do it all the time, including answering our phone 7 days a week. So if you're an installer, you call us on Saturday afternoon, your favorite football team starting in an hour, and you got a couple settings you're working through, we will help you get there. And we've always done that. So what you're looking at on the slide is EnergySage.com. EnergySage is a great website. They have a lot of resources about solar panels and batteries and racking and inverters and you name it. It's a good resource. And one of the things that we like is the ability for customers to go and leave reviews. And as you can see, we have 130 5-star reviews. You can see the companies that are below us on this chart. We love all these guys. They're a competition, smart companies, every one of them. We're super happy to be on top of this. This is 130 people. They may be installers, they may be homeowners, business owners, I'm not sure. But those 130 people have personally experienced our best-in-class technology and our world-class customer support to the extent that they decided that the result of that was them going to EnergySage and leaving us a 5-star review. So super happy about that. As you can see, it's funny, when I started doing this, we were at about, 70 reviews or something, we were kind of rocking and rolling. And we have seen the companies below us put a very, very concerted effort onto this. The numbers below us have climbed considerably as we've been going from 70, and we're just scratching and clawing our way there, one review at a time, the way we do it. So we've kind of gone our way up to 130, but the 265 and the 363 and some of these other numbers have been much, much, much lower. So you can see everybody kind of focusing on this, but we're very happy about this, and we certainly hope to continue this. If you want to do business with us, we will give you 5-star service as well. So we do have a proven business model. The first thing we don't focus on a lot, but we do have a couple of outlets for, and that's the e-commerce retail. I think Alt-E is probably the big dog there as far as moving stuff online. It's not something we look for per se. We got a few people that do it, and it's been good for us. So we like that. We definitely focus on stocking distribution. You can see some of the companies there. Again, we're very happy to be here with Team EcoDirect in Carlsbad. And we have a lot of stocking distributors. You'll see more about that as we go forward. Another thing that we do is we have strategic partnerships. We call those integrators. Some of our integrators are battery partners. Fortress, Discover, Home Grid, Lithion might be examples of that. And then others are not, to where we have companies that are doing remote power in a box applications for us, where it's like a 20-foot sea container that you might drop in the jungle or the desert somewhere. And it's a power plant unto itself with batteries, PV, inverters, etc. So those are also integrators. We have a company called Beam that does EV charging stations with solar converters. They're a publicly traded company. That's another integrator of ours. So the 3 areas, e-commerce, retail, stocking distribution, and strategic partnerships, are definitely kind of how we get our products out into the marketplace. So again, here is a partial list of some of our distributors. Super happy about these guys. Love all of them. It's a great network. They're scattered about the country. They have different attributes and different strengths and weaknesses and whatever. So again, we like to try to make the solar gear as widely accessible to the marketplace as possible. So treat everybody with respect, and that's a partial sampling of our distribution network. And the installers is really where the rubber meets the road, as far as I'm concerned, in the whole solar industry. Everybody needs home and business owners that are going to install solar, perhaps utility companies for the big stuff, etc. But the installers is really where, they buy everything out of the distributors. They're the ones design the system. They're the one that work with the customer, figure out their goals, their desires, do a load analysis, size the system. There's a lot of critical things going on that the installer does to drive everything forward. So We've been focusing on installers since probably the second quarter of last year, and we will continue to focus on installers for the entire year of 2022 and into the foreseeable future. We just think that it's super critical. So if you are an installer, we'd love to hear from you. We do have a map on our website that helps customers find you. We give leads to installers all that, like hundreds a month. We give out hundreds of free leads a month. And if somebody comes to our website, says, I'm in Yuma, Arizona, and I want a solar system with some batteries and some solar. And on our website, we'll pull up the closest 3 installers by zip code and send them to the client, and off they go. So it's something that we will continue to do, and we see as a valuable resource for us and the installer base. But if you're an installer of Team Solar, we'd love to hear from you. We try to make our hardware as reliable and robust as possible, and we try to do some really slick things to help you guys out. A couple of which I will mention as we move forward in here. We got some nice things that installers truly appreciate. So I mentioned bankability earlier and financing and whatnot. You can see on the left side of this slide, Sunlight Financial, LoanPal, Enium, SunGage, Mosaic, and Dividend. That's 6, I think, probably of the bigger finance companies. It may be the 80-20 rule where, that's the smaller group that's going to do 80% of the business. We feel like that's a pretty good group. If there's new financing companies that pop up and begin to get popular, we'll engage them and try and get our hardware pre-approved from them as well. But as you can see the bullets there, we do HALT testing, and HALT stands for Highly Accelerated Life Testing. So we do that to prove out the longevity of it and substantiate the warranty. We are pre-approved from all of these financing options that you see on the left. So any one of those, Solar hardware is pre-approved for. Now, remote fleet management. I mentioned a second ago, we got some nice tricks for installers. Solar has a monitoring solution called PowerView, and PowerView is free for the customer. It's free for the installer. It's free for life. We don't ever come back and say, hey, we're going to charge you $10 a month to see your system. So it's also very, very powerful. Our monitoring solution, PowerView, provides complete access, complete visibility, and complete remote control. And it's that remote control part that really is valuable for installers. I've talked to many installers who said, I came in Monday morning, I got an error from one of my clients that happened on Sunday afternoon. It's a 2-hour drive. They're one of my best friends, or my cousin, my brother-in-law, whatever. Everybody's got relatives everywhere. And I really want to take care of my customer. So I logged into PowerView. I determined what was going on. I was able to go in and change the setting, clear the fault, get the system back online while I was having a cup of coffee at my desk. That saved me 4 hours on the road and maybe an hour at the customer site, 5 hours. Love you guys. So that PowerView is insanely valuable for installers in that context. We've got lots of stock available. One of the things that we like to do at Solark is maintain a good military constant state of readiness. So we know the supply chain's wonky. We know it's hard to move gear across the big pond. We know it's hard to get gear once you have moved it across the big pond. So all of these things are coming together to make things a little bit difficult in the supply chain world. So we have, as best we can, read the tea leaves, navigated it and put some forethought into it to make sure that we're ready. We have, honestly, in 2021, we gobbled up a lot of market share, putting products into the market where perhaps our competitors were having a hard time doing that. So we try to maintain our stock levels, and we'll continue to focus on that. We have a lower cost of goods sold and an easier install. We've got some more details on that moving forward, but we really do feel that it's easier to put our systems together. Time is money kind of out in the world if you're an installer. So that's also pretty critical. We also think that we bring the best overall value to the customers in energy storage. So if you're in sales, a Solark and a home grid system with a SmartLoad 15 is arguably one of the most powerful and cost-effective ESS solutions in the market today. Again, everything that we build is military-grade reliability. We live and eat and breathe that kind of stuff. And we have hundreds and hundreds of off-grid installations. I know we have 500 in the Navajo Nation alone. And if you want to, you want to find out how good your hardware is, you run it off-grid. There's no grid. You're the power plant 24/7, 365. And that'll show you where the weak spots are. So we have a lot of systems off-grid. We came from off-grid. We love off-grid. So it's really where we kind of make our bread and butter. And if you're running with the grid, again, you want intelligent modes to interact with the grid to optimize the return on your system. You want to make as much money with your electrical system as you can, your PV, and you want to save as much money as you can. You want to keep PG&E out of your shorts as much as you can. So when we're connected to the grid, the SolArc elegantly and in a sophisticated manner handles all that. And then when the grid drops, in 4 milliseconds, we're off grid. And that's where we really start to make our money. So lots and lots of off grid, but highly bankable solutions coming out of SolArc. Battery partners. We are agnostic to the batteries, as we mentioned before. Don't care about brand, don't care about type, don't care about chemistry. For the 12K, we need a 48-volt battery. So that's what you see here. We have a lot of battery partners. In the battery space, historically, if you're popular, Discover's popular battery, Simplifies popular battery, Fortress popular battery, Home Grid, Endure Energy, some new kids on the block, popular batteries. If you are a popular battery, we'll typically find you, you'll find us, we'll run into each other. We give them an inverter, they give us a battery, we take the battery to the lab, we look under the hood, we beat the crap out of it, and we check out the BMS. And we want to make sure, that everything's rugged, it's reliable, it's quality. And if we, and then we look at the company, we look at their financing, we look at how young they are, how new they are, how many batteries they got into the market, how long they've been out there, all these kinds of things. And once we fully vet the battery company on technical front, finance front, market front, sales front, we kind of look at them like a Rubik's Cube. And once we fully vet the battery company, then we will work to establish full communications with their system, which lets the inverter and their BMS really talk together and allow the BMS to use all of its functionality in conjunction with the inverter. And so these battery companies that you see here on this slide are this group. We have vetted them. We've talked to them. We like them. We've got lots and lots and lots and lots of systems out there installed with them. And we have full communications with their batteries and our BMS. So again, we're agnostic to the batteries. We're neutral about the batteries. And we want to give all of the home and business owners out there in the world as much choice as we can. These are all great battery companies. So this is a slide that talks a little bit about kind of the longevity and some of the prices, right? It's how much kilowatt there is on the inverter, and then how much there is on the battery, and then the lifetime of the battery, and then there's some cost. So you can see SolarEdge in the lower left, you see Tesla in the upper left, you see Generac over in the upper right, you see SolArc down in the corner. And you can see, so this is our 15K inverter. Let me just say that. And it's 15 kilowatts continuous AC on grid, 12 kilowatts off grid. If you pair that with a 20 kWh battery from, I think it's Home Grid. And on this slide, this is cool too. I just noticed it. On this slide, you're seeing something that's new and exciting that we are going to be showing in our booth at Intersolar here in 2 days. And that is an integrated solution with Home Grid. So in the lower right corner, what you are seeing there is SolArc 15 kilowatt inverter and what's 4.8 times 3?
13.
14.4?
Yeah.
4.8 kWh times 3, 14.4 kWh of LFP from Lithion, Home Grid. The white slices there down at the bottom, each one of those is 4.8 kWh. So you just count them 3, that's 14.4. And then you can see the costs associated with this. So with the point of the slide, we look at it from a value standpoint. what kind of we understand all the electrical considerations where we compare ourselves with one another. We'll see a lot more about that as we move forward here in this slide deck. So we love technically comparing ourselves with the other guys. The warranty, I believe there's a 16-year warranty on the home grid batteries, and you can see the price. So again, I would challenge everybody. I mean, we think with the 15 kilowatt inverter, some home grid batteries, insert kilowatt hour amount here. And then you can price them up. This one doesn't have a smart load with it, but if you add a smart load, which we'll get into in the presentation moving forward, we really think we're bringing a lot of value to the marketplace in terms of the power, efficiency, and capabilities of an ESS system, especially with the 15 kilowatt inverter that has 15,000 watts of continuous AC power and big surge power. So, Dustin, you want to maybe go, this is our existing models. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Dustin Douglas.
So these are kind of the lineups that we have now. So you'll see here we have the 5K, the 8K, and the 12K. So these are the ones that have been tried and true through a lot of, on-site, off-grid type situations. The 5K and 8K, I do want to point out that they are single units only. There is no possibility of parallel stacking, as that is the only for the 12K. The 8K does come with a 5-year standard warranty, can be extended onto a 10-year warranty if available, or if you wanted. The 5K, though, is only a 5-year warranty. There is no ability to extend it. And then also on top of that, the 5K does not have CEC or HECO compliant. So it is only for off-grid applications in both California and Hawaii. You'll see the kind of corresponding specs for each system. Obviously, each system does have a little bit different as far as how much solar you can land on it, what the AC output is, all that kind of good stuff. For the most part, there is, the equipment is the same. So for instance, you will have like 2 charge controllers, 2 MPPTs. You're also going to have 2 inputs per MPPT. The main difference is obviously the 10 amps here, 18 amps on the 8K, and then 20 amps on the 12K. So a little bit different as you're going on and looking through. The biggest thing I do want to point out is the AC coupling capabilities. You'll see AC coupling is 9,600 watts on all the inverters. So we try to be as flexible and as forgiving in those aspects, just because we understand retrofits and limitations are there. So we try to give as much pass-through capabilities as possible. All of these inverters are shipped as a NEMA 3R rated enclosure. The 8K and the 12K are the only models that can have the option for EMP. The 5K does not, but obviously, there's some limitations for the 5K in general. So we see a lot of these being used, and really it just kind of depends on what you're looking for your project, as these can all be kind of curtailed and to what equipment you're using. And like David was saying earlier, they're going to be agnostic in the sense of panels, batteries, and all that kind of good stuff. It's just a matter of sizing it appropriately for your needs. So what comes inside the box, if you've joined any of our webinars before, obviously we try to go through what is included on the system. So you do get the 5/8 temperature limiter sensors, which is included, which is letter A over here on the right-hand side. We do offer larger ones if necessary. So if you are in a project of 400 amp service where they use 4-aught wire or anything like that, you can use the larger ones. They are an additional cost, as ones that come with the unit are as part of the entire package already. So there is the 15/16, which we call kind of the large sensors. And then we have the 2-inch diameter ones, which is the extra large. So if you are interested or if you are in need of those, then obviously we can produce those at the time. Every system does come with a battery temp sensor as well. So if you're using lead acid batteries, flooded, any batteries that really needs to be mindful of temperature compensation, then we have that available out of the box. So that way, we can make any changes on the fly or really compensate for, lower temperatures or higher temperatures. Battery cable toroids, letter E. These are mainly there for EMI or anything like that coming from the inverter, just because electromagnetic interference is kind of an issue, especially if it's not allowing you to use your garage door opener or anything like that. We provide, any way to get rid of that, so that way you can, not going to have any interference coming from the inverter. and any of your appliances inside of your home. There's also a Cat5 cable that is provided from every inverter as well. This is mainly for parallel communication, so really it's only applicable for the 12K, considering that is the only parallel stackable unit. So that's right out of the gate as well, so you're not having to source a specific cable for that. An Allen key, I will say this, an Allen key is not necessarily provided anymore unless you're purchasing an indoor unit. And the reasoning why is when we went to the NEMA 3R enclosure, we went to clasps instead of Allen screws. So there's not really a need for the Allen key anymore, just because, again, we've kind of made the system to where it's easy access at the bottom. We don't really have to worry about it too much. Letter H is the French cleat. This is the wall mounting solution that we use for the Solark. Really easy to install. You use the 3 ports to locate the French cleat on the studs on the wall, piece of plywood, however you want to, and then the inverter hangs over on top of the little hinge at the top. Really easy, simple. And then we also have the Wi-Fi plug. This also comes with every inverter as well, as the monitoring device is a part of the system. We do not charge anything more for the monitoring, or there's no subscription fee or anything like that. It is part of the whole package itself, because we want to provide as much information as possible for how the system functions and what it's able to do. Letter J and letter K, obviously pretty straightforward. You do get the inverter inside the box. And then obviously letter K, there will be a physical copy of the owner's manual, depending on which inverter you are using. So really helps out, because that way you can take a look and kind of go back and look at it if you ever need to for installation, kind of changing settings or anything remotely.
And Dustin, the one thing I would add is that EcoDirect is one of our smart distributors that's taking advantage of our suggestion to carry the larger CTs.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that Renee's team here has some of the 15, 16, and 2-inch CTs that are in stock if you need them. Not everything will fit in the 15, 16, so it's nice to have the other ones available.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we do have the standard wiring area for the Solark as well. Again, we try to be as all-in-one as possible. So on the right-hand side, let's see, do we actually have the? We do. All right, so we actually have, the AC breakers on the right-hand side. The grid, and the load are both going to be the same. So they're both rated for a 63 amp breaker. The generator breaker itself is rated for 50 amps. The AC coupling, this is why on the gen breaker, we can do up to 9.6 kilowatts for AC coupling, because of the 120% rule for outputs. 9.6 is kind of the sweet spot for a 50 amp breaker. So that's where that goes and lands on the gen breaker itself. The load breaker is what we consider our off-grid or critical loads connections. So therefore, 63 amps, and then also 63 amps for the grid breaker, so we can have an equivalent amount of pass-through. So that way, if you're not having enough solar, but the grid is available, we can use the grid to kind of substitute extra power for the loads if necessary. In the middle there, we do have the charge controllers. So we do have 2 MPPT inputs. The max total is 13 kilowatts, and this is looking at a 12K unit, not necessarily a 5K or an 8K, because that will be a little bit different. But you can do up to 13 kilowatts of DC coupling into the Solark itself. Each MPPT has 2 inputs, so you can physically land up to 4 strings into the unit itself. You can get away with doing other things as well, DC combiners, Y connectors, anything like that. So if you want to parallel at the array rather than inside the unit, that's always an option as well. In the past, actually, just recently, I had a customer use high voltage panel but low amperage, and they were able to do 3 strings in parallel with one another and only have that land on a single MPPT. So again, it kind of just depends on the panel you're using, and we're always happy to take a look and kind of give you the best suggestion. And then also on the DC battery breaker side, we do have a 250 amp built-in DC breaker, really just there for OCP, overcurrent protection. Just to really make sure we can meet any types of codes, because I have seen, at least with NEC 2020, there's going to be a lot of new code coming out for removing the batteries from the system just for safety purposes. So we're trying to be a little bit forward-thinking in that regards by having that already built in, especially as this code becomes more concrete. So the same unit does 12240 or 12208. I do want to point out that is 208Y, not 208 Delta. 208 Delta does have the high leg, which unfortunately we do not support without a transformer. So just keep that in mind that we do support Y as 12208 goes. They are outdoor rated, so the electronics themselves are NEMA 4, but due to the screen on the front of the unit, we had to get NEMA 3R. So anytime you do mount this outside, we just ask that it's not in direct sunlight so it doesn't burn out the screen over time. Pretty straightforward. Parallel stacking, you can do up to 9 inverters in the 208 three-phase application. You can do up to 8 inverters in a 12240. So really you can size it to whatever you need. Really helps out with those bigger and larger projects because we keep seeing those every day. So as we come out with newer products and things like that, then this will be a little bit more formidable in those regards. So this is what the kind of wiring area looks like once it's all done up. So you'll see how it's kind of looks pretty with all the different, conduit runs and things like that. You can really kind of make it look really clean. So this is probably one of my favorite pictures as far as install goes, because this is probably by far one of the cleanest installs I've ever seen. You will see how we have the MPPT charge controllers. This is actually for an indoor unit, so it does have a little bit of different layout, but the concept is still the same. The colorful wires in here in the middle, those are actually going to the pins. So that's where your battery temp sensor, your CTs, all of your 2-wire start capabilities, things like that will land. But everything else is pretty much the same. All your AC breakers, your ground and neutral, and then your batteries connections on the left-hand side.
Yeah, and if you look in the middle of this slide, you can see the unit has CAN bus, Modbus, and RS-485. And so with those 3 communication protocols, it enables us to talk to parallel stack systems, generators, and battery management systems, etc.
Yep. So this is kind of just a simple breakdown of the Solarc inside. You'll see from our kind of whiteboard drawing, we do work from a common bus. So we don't, like with other manufacturers, what they do is they go from the solar to the batteries and then the batteries to the loads themselves. So we looked at that and saw how that was very inefficient. So the way we do it, we work from a high voltage bus. So that way we can go directly from the solar to AC. So that eliminates a lot of the, round trip inefficiency losses that can happen. And then also too, you can kind of see there's just different parts. So we do have like the DC to DC to the batteries. MPPTs go into a high voltage bus that allows us to go to AC. And so that way it just helps out for the system in the long run, just because, again, we're not having to oversize the system to mitigate any of those inefficiencies. So it really helps out in costs and also with the amount of equipment needed. So,
and like a lot of good companies, this actually started on the back of a napkin at the bar, but then it got transferred to the whiteboard, and then we put it into more marketing format.
Yep.
Looks good. I like your copy better.
So here is just a little bit of a breakdown comparison between the 12K and some of the other manufacturers on the market. So you'll see, we do have a 63 amp 4 millisecond transfer time for the subloads or the critical loads panel, however you want to call it. It is an all-in-one. Load management is not needed versus where you have Tesla and LG or the Enphase. They do either use a third-party load management or a small load management from Enphase. So we do have 7-day weeks, single support line for support, solar and storage for both installer and end customer. A lot of that is very important, at least especially in our regards, just because we want to make sure we can answer those questions in a timely manner. We're not leaving people in the dark. And also we're not, having to have people schedule stuff for meetings, just because, again, one of the things that we like to do is power families through life. If we're not able to do that in a timely manner, then it kind of looks bad. So peak current, we do have 67 amps for off grid. It is a little bit different. If you look at our spec sheet, we do have a 25 kilowatt for 100 milliseconds. And then we have the 16 kilowatts for 10 seconds, which that is what the number is represented here, which if you do it's about 66.6 amps. So round it up to 67 just to be as comparable, which is obviously higher than a lot of our competitors. So that allows us to use, larger pieces of equipment, air conditioners, pumps, wells, things like that you're not really able to power. We can do that all in one unit rather than having to stack multiples. So really helps out for those off-grid users. Continuous PV to AC power on grid is 9 kilowatts. And comparing that to two of the power walls, which is 15, Generac is only about 7.6, and then the Enphase is about 10 to 15 kilowatts. So obviously there we try to be as competitive, but really the continuous battery power on or off grid at 9 kilowatts is also a really big, powerful thing. Just because, again, looking at with Tesla, as that's the only one that is greater than us, it does require 2 of them, but we can provide the same amount of power output, whether on grid or off grid, working from the batteries or from PV. So really, really able to, help produce and have continuous power throughout the entire day. Battery lifespan. So we do have 16 years roughly for LFP. There is no cooling needed. And then you have against everybody else where Enphase is the only other LFP that is necessarily there. Everybody else is NMC. And those do have to have, active cooling just because we want to avoid thermal runaway. I don't know if anybody here has seen any videos of thermal runaway. It is kind of terrifying. There was a recent one that we saw where it was I believe it was at a fire station or something like that, where they had a thermal runaway in the testing unit. But it literally blew the door open so fast that it knocked the firemen off their feet. So thermal runaway is pretty important, especially for NMC. So you do want to be cautious of that as LFP becomes more popular, also price and that becomes more competitive. It tends to be a little bit safer route. Hardware reliability, we do have 20 plus years design life. Like David was saying earlier, we do have HALT testing, which stands for highly accelerated life testing, which allows us to really get an idea of what the system's capable of doing over a period of time. AC coupling. So AC coupling is also a really awesome feature just because, again, we do understand people have grid side systems before. They want to add battery backup, and instead of removing all of that equipment and having to start fresh, we can at least use what is already existing and also integrate it into our unit to use either an off-grid or an on-grid type situation. So we do use frequency shifting in order to do so. So we can tell the microinverters or the grid side unit what frequency it receives, and that'll dictate how much power it puts out. Charging battery from a generator, pretty interesting to see, especially since one of the competitors on here is a generator manufacturer. I haven't really, that's been a feature that ever since I've started, especially with the 8K, that's always been a really popular feature just because, again, it's a great source or another source of power that you can use to help charge the batteries, power your loads and everything like that. PV to battery to AC efficiency, we are at 93%, so only about a 7% loss comparatively to our other competitors, which are in the 85 to 87% range, and LG, unfortunately, at that 82%. Single fleet management tool with remote setup. So one of the features that we do enjoy is the Power View, just like David was mentioning earlier. I kid you not, I'm probably on Power View probably 80% of my day. It allows us to see and troubleshoot anything that might be going wrong on the system. We can get really just about everything that we want from Power View. We can see voltages, current. We can see what's going on the MPPTs. If their grid is kind of being fluctuating from the islands, Puerto Rico, other places, then we can make changes and adjust the system remotely rather than having to go on site. So it really helps out there. And then obviously customer satisfaction rating. So we are, this will actually show you from the previous slide earlier, we are at 5 stars out of 130 reviews. That is all organic, like David was saying. But here in this slide, it looks like we had it at 73. So we've come a long way and really try to provide that top in class service and, really try to give them best 5-star support.
I have a question before
Yes, ma'am.
we move on.
Yeah.
So with the fleet management system, like, are they prompted to do that through, like, when they're going through the configuration process, or is that just something that they do online after the fact? They use the serial number and input that data?
So whenever you're creating the plant name, because we always call it a plant, they have the option of basically the installer can always create it. So typically what we do is we have the customer, the homeowner, create the plant. And then what they do is they can share the abilities or the capabilities or permissions with the installer. So for instance, if they have the installer that says, hey, I want to be, interactive with your system, I want to make sure, or maybe that's in their contract with their installer, then they can always share that with permissions. So that way the installer can see it, but the customer always has kind of full use of that. But that just allows, again, for remote monitoring. And then also if the installer is pretty familiar with the system, they can always make changes remotely. Especially as we add new features. One of the biggest ones I'll probably say that's been adding soon is the seasons. So as people have different rates for on demand, maybe from 4 to 6 during the summertime, but then in the wintertime, it's from 7 to 9. We're adding seasons into where time of use, so you can preset those and you can change that remotely. So it's going to be really nice.
It's a good question. And one of the things I would say is that we do leave the homeowner in the driver's seat.
Yes,
So
always.
most of the time, installers and homeowners have a good relationship. They're great. The installer does a good job. The homeowner trusts the installer. Hey, help me out, keep my system going. That's by far the norm. Every once in a while, maybe an installer goes out of business or something. Homeowners then like, oh, Johnny Solar is no longer in business. A year later, they're like, hey, they meet Fred Solar and they say, I want to share with them. That's fine. It's always that homeowner that's in control and can either share or not share with the installers as they choose.
And also, too, as people sell their homes, if people move or do something like that, it's very easy to transfer that information over to the other person's account. So that way you're not really losing any of the previous data, but at least the owner of the account is going to be representative of who lives there or whatever like that. Yeah.
So are they able to then, like if they wanted to take away like the ability, so maybe they just for whatever reason said, okay, I needed some help with this. Now that you helped me, I'm all set. I kind of want to remove that viewing access. Can they, like take that away?
So one of the things is as you're creating it, you'll share either with or without permissions. So really, if you just wanted to say, hey, I don't really want you to mess with anything at all as far as settings go, maybe they can just advise you along the way to share it without the permissions. So that way the installer will at least be able to see it. But if you ever get to the point where, the installer or the whatever just needs to be removed, just let us know. We can remove them from having access altogether. Because again, at the end of the day, the homeowner is really the one that makes that decision unless they've rented out or maybe they're on a payment schedule with the installer or something for the equipment. That's something we don't try to get into because that's none of our business. But at least we try to accommodate the homeowner as much as we can.
Yeah, and there's one last feature that's in there that may be relevant to this kind of dialogue. There's a lockout all changes. So every once in a while, we've had an installer tell us, I've got this great couple. I just installed a solar system. They're sweet as all can be. Mr. Jones is 90 and Mrs. Jones is 91, and they trust me to run the system. So I really don't want them touching buttons or pushing on things. And so there is a lockout changes. Small children sometimes, maybe elderly people. I mean, there's a couple different circumstances where that might come into play. And the homeowner can do it. The homeowner always, has the ability to do it. And to the extent they share with an installer and give permissions, then they can do it as well.
And that's actually something that's a really good point is to make is that's something we're seeing a lot from utilities as well. Is there, especially with these on-demand programs that they're wanting to get into, a lot of these utilities are wanting some type of way to prevent the homeowner, which is kind of ironic to me, but to prevent the homeowner from being involved so much. So as long as everything is set per the contract or agreement that they have, then there's no way for anybody to go in there and change it. So parallel stacking. So here's just a kind of an overview of some parallel stack units that we have seen. So you'll see probably the coolest one is I like the Simplify. It's really nifty because it's all mounted on the wall, so nothing really on the floors. And then also you'll see kind of the conduit and raceways being used for all the wire runs. So it kind of looks really cool, but you'll see really we are agnostic in that sense. So on the bottom left-hand side, that should be stores. And then on the right-hand side, you have Fortress, which is just a 3 parallel system with about 7 of the E-vaults. So very interesting to look at. So large whole home case studies. So here is a case study. It's using the same kind of 3 system with the 7 E-vaults. So it's 30 kilowatts of DC PV on top of the roof, which gives us with 3 systems, gives us 27 kilowatts of AC output continuously. Surge is 50 kilowatts of AC that's a little bit, I think that's a little bit off actually. So 16 kilowatts. Actually, no, that's about right. So That is about 50 kilowatts per surge for 10 seconds, and then the storage is about 111 kilowatt hours. So very scalable in the sense that you can, kind of size it to whatever you're needing. I think the 9 system one is still in here as well.
Yeah, so this system you're looking at on this slide does not have a load management component yet, but that's definitely whole home backup capable.
Mhm.
You got 6 E-Vaults, you got a whole home backup for sure.
So here it's kind of the same kind of timeline. You'll see here is a whole home kind of setup with 2 systems. They have 60.8 kilowatt hours worth of storage, up to 40 kilowatts of AC surge. And then we also have continuous 18 kilowatts AC with 26 kilowatts of DC connected to the MPPTs. So just to kind of give it a rough estimate of the different items that you're able to run. So you'll see on the left-hand side, there's about 3 refrigerators. There's a wall unit, a central AC, 2 freezers, some lights, fans, washing machine, dishwasher, really computers, microwave, security system, coffee maker. We all have to have our coffee. So kind of puts in perspective of the different items that you can run. Obviously, every project is a little bit different. So we always try to be mindful of that. So if you have pumps or anything like that, a lot of the times you can get away with 2 systems being a whole home backup. Here's the really cool one. Here is a 9 system 208 3-phase application. I don't think we ever got a photo of the solar that was actually on the roof, but it's actually 117 kilowatts worth of solar on top of the roof, which with 9 systems gives us 81 kilowatts of AC output, surge of 108 kilowatts of AC, and then the storage here is 9,900 amp hours. So really cool feature. Also, too, if you look really closely, those little stickers here represent that these are all EMP hardened units. So really, really cool in the sense that they really looked at the redundancy. Plus, the layout of this just looks really amazing. They put it all on, the wall with the conduit and everything running to the main panel. So it really looks pretty and professional whenever you're looking at the system.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite installations. That is a machine shop in Michigan. It's a professional machine shop, CNC, and they take their energy independence seriously.
So here's just a kind of a breakdown of the outputs from the 12K perspective. So at a 12208, really the only difference here is after 3 inverters, we do go into variables of 3. So you can do 1, 2, 3, 6, or 9 systems in a 3-phase application. And a 12240, though, you can do anything scaled up to 8. And then obviously that gives you a comparable amount of output, the pass through, and then also the peak power production for that type of setup. So this is also located in the manual, so I won't really borrow too much time of that because I want to get to the good stuff. So virtual power plants and peak shaving, this is where the newer units and then also the Smart Loads 14 is becoming very, very popular. So one of the things that we've seen for VPPs or virtual power plants is really the use, or just like we were discussing earlier, for the homeowner or the business owner to really take advantage of what they're able to produce and also be in the energy production market by either selling back power to the grid at a specific cost or at least just being able to have backup power. So here you'll notice we do have home grid ESS, which you're looking at about $1.60 to $2 per watt. And then with the Smart Loads 14, which is only about 13 cents per watt. So really helps out there. Looking at the Smart Loads, this is one of the newer products that we will be releasing, I believe, in really soon. I don't necessarily have a specific date just yet, but it does have local monitoring. There's 14 channels. Each of them are 100 amp rated. So every one of these channels are all for 120 volts. If you do have a 240 volt appliance, you'll be using 2 of the channels. Pretty straightforward. It does have onboard CTs, built-in CTs, so you don't necessarily need external CTs anymore. It's going to give you how much power flow, how much consumption, the amount of volts, how much current is going on each circuit. So it really allows you to set priorities for each one as well. It does have a built-in AI. So the built-in AI is really cool. So after about 14 days of using the system's actually going to send you a notification and say, hey, it would be better off to use, limited power to load with this much time of use. So that way you can, optimize your system to work best for you. So really helps out to really help out with people that, as they add different items or different things like that, the system's going to try and learn all the time to make sure that it's, you're using the system appropriately for what you're doing. Loading priority based on available inverter power. So if you are in an off-grid situation, we want to make sure that there's enough battery power, there's enough solar and everything going on. So as you set these priorities, if there's not enough load or if there's not enough power stored up or enough on the solar, then it's not going to turn that load on. So you're not going to have the risk of overloading the unit. It does have percent SOC, time of use, net zero, and grid peak shaving. Like I said, the use of AI to suggest the settings after about 14 days. It is locally update firmware and upload data to the cloud. So if you do, there's going to be working from an IP address. So if you want to basically look at things locally rather than having to go to the cloud, you would just log into the IP address of this unit, because it does have built-in Wi-Fi, local area network, and RS-485, CAN bus, and OpenADR. So it's going to fit all of those check boxes. So it's going to allow you the different capabilities. If you're off grid, you don't have any internet at all, then the local way of doing it is going to be the best friend. So it is dual power supplies. So it is also an ANEMA 3R case and a manual bypass switches for all of these circuits. So for instance, if something happens or if you really need to run that load off the grid, or if you don't really want to have the priority set, you can physically go in there. There's a little switch. It usually sits between, it's on the outside of these, because you'll see here, this is just a little open and closed circuit. It'll allow you to flip that switch, and that'll let you bypass that entire circuit to the grid or some other power source as well. So it really helps out. This is going to have a 200 amp bypass. So if you have a 200 amp load service or a 200 amp panel, it's going to have that built into the unit as well. So this entire unit is also agnostic. You don't have to use this with our system. It's going to be on a kind of on a league of its own. If they want to use this with somebody else's product on the market, by all means, go ahead. It's going to have all of the different features, but we do encourage to use it with our newer stuff because it's going to be kind of an easy all-in-one solution.
Yeah, but it's a good point, Dustin. We didn't do anything to lock it in and make it proprietary in any way. Yep. You can use that smart load 14 panel with anything you want, and it'll do what it's supposed to do.
Yep.
It's essentially a critical load panel then.
Yes.
And so instead of putting in a sub panel, if you have your main service panel, you put in the smart load panel, and that would take over for your critical load.
Exactly.
You'll never need to do a critical loads panel again.
So this paired,
because think real quick, that's a great question, Renee. When you do a critical loads panel, the homeowner has a 200 amp panel, and they got, let's say, 30 circuits, right? Any one of our homes. And you want to do a critical loads panel, let's say you do 14 circuits. It's easier with 14 because we did a lot of them, but a lot of times critical loads panel have 6 circuits, 8 circuits, 10 circuits. And what you do is you look at your 32 and you have to make hard and fast decisions. What goes into that critical loads panel? Master electrician comes along, or journeyman or whatever, they hardwire it over there. Got new hardware. What's in there is in there. You don't have very much control over it. You don't have any programmability. You got nothing. And later you're like, I don't know how many homeowners I've talked to, like, I forgot to put the security camera circuit on there. It's like, what the hell? You got my bunker, but I can't have no security camera. So the point is, once you make those decisions, you're kind of locked in. And this frees up that. So there's 14 circuits you pull off of that 30, and you have all kinds of elegant control over that. And the power can pass through to the other 16 circuits. You got the whole shooting match. And nobody had to make any decisions about that light or that circuit or that security camera or the garage light or the one on the back patio or, whatever. That you have to always remember when you're doing that hard critical loads panel. It's very difficult to undo a decision in the critical load.
Well, and the thing is too, and I haven't really got to this point, but this is stackable as well. So if you could do up to 15 of these smart loads, if your heart desires, that's one of those deals where it is scalable, just like with our inverters, to make sure that you can really have that kind of smart load capability for any circuit that you want to run. So
if you could essentially match it then, if you have your 200 amp
Yep.
service panel, then just get 2 smart load panels, and then you could just bypass one or the other. And
Well,
so if you didn't, Or maybe, I guess you wouldn't.
Well, you
need
don't
to.
necessarily. So, and I'm going to show you just here in a second where this paired with the new 15K. This is going to be really important for the loads that you want to make sure you have managed. So, like your larger inductive loads, things like that. But the 15K itself, it doesn't need a critical loads panel at all, just because it has the 200 amp bypass in it already. So therefore, you would land your entire 200 amp panel on the SolArc itself. That paired with one of these smart loads, so allows you to control those really high inductive loads or really anything you want to, and that's it. That's all you need.
Just add batteries and you got a whole hook back.
So just to kind of put in perspective the cost, so a lot of the ones that we've seen on the market, so you'll see like Generac has their own smart loads, Lumen, Span are probably the more common ones. So we kind of come in right at that middle. Generac, I believe, is, if I'm not mistaken, is proprietary to only their equipment. I don't think they are universal. However, we are. And that's really the only, the benefit for us is we do have 14 circuits. Briggs & Stratton does have a 32 circuit max. And then Span also has 32 circuits as well. Each of our circuits are 100 amp rated, which you'll see is kind of common between the two. Generac is also 100 amp, but you're only limited to 8 of them. Power measurements is in all of them except to Generac. Like I said, we do have built-in CTs on every circuit, so that way we can track the power flow. But the transfer time or switchover time. So we did integrate our 4 millisecond transfer time into the smart load as well. So you get that no glitch transfer over. You don't lose your microwave clock. You don't have to reset it or anything. That really helps out. It works on grid. Ours, and then time of use energy shifting. Yes, for us, AI learning is probably a new one. I don't obviously here, none of these have AI self-programming kind of learning process. So that is going to be very powerful, especially if you are in an off-grid situation, just because, again, it's always going to tell you kind of the best way to make the system work better for you in the long run. And then also communications. So we do have local area network, Wi-Fi, RS-45, and CAN bus all built in. Obviously, some of the other ones do as well. I'm not sure of the different kinds. And then stacking. We can stack up to 15 of these bad boys. So really, like I said, you can have whatever circuit you want to run, you can have it on a smart load. So not a lot of people have that capabilities. Obviously, you can see here.
Well, and 15 times 140 or 15 times 14 circuits, you could run an office building, 208 volt 3-phase with that kind of muscle. That's a lot of circuits to be controlling.
You have to go in with the 3 if you are doing it for 208, or does it matter?
So it's well, not necessarily, because so in the 3-phase project, all of them are at 120. The only time you're getting 208 was when you're going line to line. So the same thing as 240 and a 208, you'll just use 2 of the circuits for like a 208 piece of equipment. So if it's a pump or something that runs at 208, you'll just use 2 of the circuits. Same thing as what you would do for like a 120, 240. Yep. This just kind of gives you an idea example. So again, we are agnostic in the sense that you don't have to use the smart load just with us. You can use it with anybody else on the market. Like I said, the smart load's going to be a beast of its own. But here you'll see, a typical panel here. They'll want to have maybe their dryer, their water heater, air conditioner, oven, pool pump, a lot of the stuff that really are high inductive loads, just because, again, those tend to be the big problem children, especially in an off-grid scenario. You can use the smart load just underneath the main service panel, and pretty much you're all set. There's no really additional equipment needed. You can have any of these kind of inverters on the market with it, and you have that capabilities right out the gate.
And Dustin, real quick, just on the connecting of the smart load, can you describe, as I understand it, for this first circuit on the left there, that's the dryer, you would disconnect that, run it down to the smart load, and then reconnect it back into the slot? Is that right?
So whenever you're looking at the smart load, there's 2 kind of what I call lugs at the top. That's what gets connected to the grid. So you're going to have a grid line come into it. That's how we have the bypass. And then there's the circuits on them as well. So just like how you would do like a 10 circuit transfer switch, you have the line coming in and the line going out. Same kind of concept. So whatever load you're wanting to run, you'll land it on one of the circuits, and then it either closes it or opens it depending on where the power is coming from. As this becomes more available, myself and a lot of especially my team, we're going to have to go through some understanding as well, because it's going to be one of those where we just want to make sure we're having as much information as possible, because it is something new and it's going to be super powerful. That I just, at least personally, I just want to make sure we give the right information. Oh, looky there. Look, decided to show up.
Hey, how's it going?
So yeah, kind of moving on. We do have tied together with the Smart Load, we have the Solark 15K. So the Solark 15K is what it sounds like. So we kind of understood, and we ran through the calls for the 12K. We understood that everybody, when you see the name 12K, people thought it was 12 kilowatts. However, the AC output was actually 9. So we took that into consideration as we came out with the 15K. So it is 15 kilowatts of continuous output whenever these PV or battery is available. When it's on battery only, it is only 12 kilowatts. So you have about 60 amps versus 50 amps.
Yeah, and we've taken a proper butt kicking out in the marketplace on the 12K, not having 12,000 watts of continuous AC power. We get the question a lot. It's like, well, what the hell did you call it a 12K for? So we took that to heart. Again, we like talking to the marketplace. We love installers that talk to us, distributors that talk to us, homeowners that talk to us, and talk to us they do. So when we came out with the 15K, we made real sure that it's a 15 kilowatt inverter with 15,000 watts of continuous AC power.
Yeah. So one of the things that we actually added on to the 15K is, one, obviously it's an increased amount of AC output. One of the physical features is, as well, is we added a third MPPT. So really it allows you to have that different facing arrays. So if you have a southern, east, and a west facing array, you can have a dedicated MPPT for that. So it really helps out in that regard. So that way you can kind of keep track and you're not having to say, oh, well, I have my east and west on one MPPT. Why am I not getting any output? Such and such. It does have 17 kilowatts worth of DC coupling. So you can do up to 17 kilowatts of solar onto the MPPTs. It does take the same kind of specs as far as the 12K goes. So it's about 150 to 425 optimal open circuit range, 500 volts. 500 volts open circuit is the maximum. The UPS time did change a little bit. It went from 4 milliseconds to 5 milliseconds. And the only reason it went to that is just because we have a little bit more moving parts, a lot more greater output. So we just want to make sure we do it in a proper manner so we don't fuse anything or have issues in that regards. Modes, kind of the same kind of aspects as you see on the 12K. Nothing's really changing there other than the AC output. So we do have our grid cell, our off grid, net meter zero, which is our limited power to home, time of use, and peak shaving. We do have built-in rapid shutdown, emergency stop. That is something that's going to be more popular, especially as NEC 2020 becomes available. Just because I can almost guarantee you it's probably going to be soon, but not only does the system have to shut down the solar panels, but it also has to turn off the ESS system itself. So that way it prevents any power going to the critical loads panel. External CT sensors, parallel communications, battery comms, auto generator start, all staying the same. As far as the 15K goes, it is agnostic in the batteries as well. 48 volts nominal and at least 50 amp hours. So you can't just put 10 amp hours on there, some little rinky-dink battery on there. We do have to have at least enough to get the internal components charged inside the unit. Grid, generator, and continuous power, all of the same kind of concept. We do have the AC in and out breaker, which is our grid breaker, our load breaker, and then we also have the generator breaker. So one of the biggest things I will say about the 15K itself is, like I said earlier, it does have a 200 amp pass-through. So there is no longer the need of a critical loads panel anymore. If you have a 200 amp service, land your 200 amp panel on the output or the load output of the system, and you're done. There's no need for removing circuits or anything like that. The continuous, like I mentioned, on grid is 15 kilowatts. 12 kilowatts is what it does off grid, off batteries only. Smart load, gen breaker, AC coupling. We can do up to 24 kilowatts of AC coupling. So it kind of makes a huge jump there, especially when we go from 9.6 to 24 kilowatts. So it helps out in those kind of retrofit perspective. Yeah, so it's going to be huge. It's going to be awesome. So just to kind of put in perspective, just like I was kind of telling Renee earlier, so we have, like I said, if it's 200 amp service, we're going to go from the 200 amps from the meter directly to our grid input. From the load output, we're going to go directly to the 200 amp rated, panel itself. And just below that, you would have your smart loads. So smart loads houses all of your inductive or your higher, use loads. And that's it. There's really no other pieces of equipment needed. There's no critical loads panel. There's no AC combiners. There's no, you still have to meet NEC code and everything like that with AC disconnects, fusible disconnects, and everything that sort. But as far as anything too crazy, this is all you really need. So it really helps out mitigating the amount of equipment, and also lowers the cost and time for install. So this helps out with installers. If they want to move on to the next project, you're not having to source, 5 different pieces of equipment. You get these 3 things and you're done. Really easy.
Yeah, simplifying the bill of materials is powerful when it comes to the install, especially even when we get in, we haven't got there yet, but when we get into the micros, if you have a lot of little extra parts, there's a cable tip and there's a female end and there's a male end and there's a cable and there's a fuse connection. Like, what? So, we try to make things as all inclusive and all in one as possible to help the installers and the homeowners and everybody involved. We want, again, best in class technology and lower the impact for everybody on the overall cost of the ESS.
And both of these units, this is obviously here we're showing a home grid all-in-one solution. So this is in their enclosure. That and the smart loads, those are all going to be outdoor rated. So obviously, if you want to mount this outdoors, by all means, go for it. That's not a problem. Again, we do ask that it's not put in direct sunlight just for the screen purposes, but you can take a water hose to the side of the unit, spray it down all you want. Nothing's going to happen. Just cleans off any dirt or anything going on. So
this is really exciting. And if you don't mind, Dustin, so on this picture here, so the main reason that you put a smart loads panel in is so the battery system in an off-grid situation, or if the utility just disconnects, would be able to tell and better manage the battery storage side of it versus just.
Well, it will do the solar as well. So as you set the priorities, so obviously since we work from a common bus, you can also look at it from a solar perspective. But if you're an off-grid perspective as well, that we can always substitute the solar with battery power if necessary. So.
Okay, so it helps you blend the power more efficiently.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am. So yeah, just to kind of put in perspective of the different units that come from Solar. So here we do have the 15K, the 12K, the 8K, and the 5K. You'll see here we do have a lot of green, just because again, anything in green we do kind of think about in forward being kind of ahead of the curve in the industry, but the only differences, or the biggest ones to take a look at, is really the amount of solar that you can land on the inverter, the AC outputs, and then also the continuous AC power, which obviously the only one lacking in that regard is going to be the 5K, just because it is a lower cost unit. It is something that is used primarily in kind of islands or in a off-grid environment. We don't necessarily see that too much in a grid-tied unit. Just because, again, we do have the 8K or the 12K, which is parallel stackable for the 12 at least. So that way you can kind of size it to whatever you're needing. But all of the efficiencies, everything like that, are roughly the same. There's nothing really too different as far as the outputs, which is one of the beautiful things about us being a transformerless-based inverter. We don't have a big hunking piece of metal inside of our unit that's consuming a lot of power. We work for high switching electronics.
Yeah, if anybody's used to our webinars, the chart that you're looking at, we call it the Christmas chart because it's red and green. We're Texans, we like to be funny and silly like that. So the logic of the chart is that if something's green, it's out in front, it's in a leadership position. If it's something's kind of neutral, we kind of left it white. And then if it's bringing up the rear and it's really lagging, we go ahead and we color it red. When you get down to the bottom of the chart there, where there's just check marks, you can see there's features, and it's either a check mark or it's not a check mark. But if you look at it's funny, look at the 12K and the 15K, we're very honest with ourselves. The one white bar in the 12K column is the fact that it's a 12K inverter, but it only does 9,000 watts of continuous AC. which we've gotten slapped around about, continuously. So we realized that we're like, oh, well, we should put that white in the chart, right? Maybe it's kind of neutral. We didn't want to color ourselves red, but we made it white because we were honest about it. And now if you look at the 15K, we're like, oh, we're not doing that again. So it's 15K inverter with 15,000 watts. Everything's green. It looks beautiful. But so that's the logic of the chart is on the coloring. I just wanted to talk about that.
So we looked at a comparison between the 12K and a lot of the competitors. Now we're going to take a look at the competition versus the 15K. Obviously, we were kind of already ahead of the curve with looking at the 12K. The biggest thing here is really just the increased AC outputs. There's the, obviously capabilities for charging battery off generators. The PV to battery AC efficiency is still as high as ever. Fleet management, customer satisfaction, all that kind of good stuff. I won't necessarily go too far in it because I've already kind of went through it. The biggest thing is probably going to be the entire home transfer switch that's built in. And then also that paired with the smart loads, which is a 14-channel 100 amp load management tool. It's going to make for an easy, cost-effective solution. The whole home ESS, I didn't know if you wanted me to go over this or.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll run down this one. Thank you, Dustin. So this is just a real quick cost comparison, kind of indicative, the installer pricing, if you will. Please don't email us anything weird about the pricing. It's indicative pricing here. But the point is the left side is the competition. The right side is Solark plus HomeGrid. And we wanted to, just run the numbers. The right side does have the Smart Load 14 in it. You see item number 7 down there. And these systems, I say they're equal, they're equally sized, but when you have the Solark 15K and that smart load panel, I will hang my hat on the functionality, the speed, the power, the efficiency of the Solark system all day long. So at the end of the day, technically, these are not equal systems. The $47,800 Solark system just beats the tar out of the $77,500 competition system. They're equal in sizing, so we could get the numbers as equal as we could in terms of pricing. The system on the right with the Solark is superior technologically in a number of ways. Not to mention being let's just call it $30,000 cheaper. So we're $30,000 cheaper, we're faster, more powerful, and more efficient.
Yeah, so just kind of taking a look again at a kind of a simple way of looking at it. It is the 15K with the 200 amp integrated transfer switch. It has the smart loads, 14s, batteries, generator control if you want to use a generator. It really kind of speaks for itself. So really there's not any additional pieces of, to the pie that you need. Yeah, it's kind of straightforward. So really, the inverter, the generator, if optional, obviously battery, 200 amp disconnect switch is really there just to meet NEC code because it's not, at least at this time, I don't believe we are going to be utility grade as far as the connection part. So you will still need a 200 amp fused disconnect just to beat NEC code. But other than that, really these 3 pieces to the puzzle, it's really all you need.
Yeah, and this has been about a 2-year journey on the behalf of Solark. We started getting feedback about the 12K, and the feedback about the 12K was somewhat similar to the feedback we had on the 8K, which was, wow, can we get it bigger, better, and faster? We're like, okay. So the 12K wanted to go to the 15K. The 15K, we very specifically made it 15,000 watts. We very specifically added a 200 amp switch. We specifically added another MPPT. People told us that, hey, I got south, west, and east. I got 17 kilowatts of PV up there. It's like, okay. So the goal that we're on here is highlighted in that yellow box on this slide. We did the research. We were talking about this earlier. We think there's about 90 million homes in America with a 200 amp panel. Most of the homes have a 200 amp panel. You got some ballers that have 600 amp panels, and we know a few of them. We got some big guys that have 400 amp panels. Most of us have 200 amp panels. Some of the smaller homes might have 150, 100 amp panels. The long bar in that bar chart is by far the 200 amp panel. So the Smart Load 14 and the 15 kilowatt inverter The idea with these two products, when combined in the everyday American home, is to just add batteries and you have a whole home backup. That's what the market was screaming at us. Forget your critical loads panel. Take your kitty little critical loads panel and throw it in the trash can. I want whole home backup. I don't want to be limited. We're like, okay, we got it. You don't want to be limited. So what you're looking at on this slide cannot be understated. We are going to solve whole home backup for 100 million homes in America, assuming I'm 10 million short. But this is powerful. This is just add batteries and you have whole home backup.
Well,
Brought to you by Solar.
And just to put it in perspective, where you had to have, I believe it was like 5 or 6 of the 12 case to meet kind of a 1-for-1 for like a whole home backup for like a 400 amp service. You get 2 15Ks, you're done. That's it. Instead of, having to have a lot of room for the systems, batteries, everything like that, 2 15Ks and you have a 1-for-1 pass through. So now we're going to get to the microinverters. So unfortunately, not everybody can see what's on the table here, but I was able to sneak through TSA one of our microinverters. So this is a dummy inverter, a micro. So it's going to have a little bit more weight to it than what you're feeling now. But the one that is here is going to be the M2000. It's a 4-channel 2000 watt microinverter. The specs are on there, and I will say this: you can connect a 500 watt panel directly to it. It is a 4-channel, microinverter, and also too, there's some kind of open circuit specs and everything like that. Just obviously to be mindful of. The micro street price is going to be about $640 a pop. The M1000s, which is another one that we're going to be offering, just as a 2-channel. I just didn't have a dummy one that I could bring. There's so many at our facility, and it would have been way too heavy in my suitcase. But cabling and cost for the micros is all included. I will say this: the one that is in everybody's hands, I believe it only has like a 1 meter cable on it, but we are extending that to a 4 meter cable to really help out with those interconnections. They're not having to make any jumpers or anything like that, just to get the AC outputs connected together or anything like that. Total cost, you're looking at the price per watt. Obviously we're looking at about $1,920 for the 2000 and about $2,490 for the 1000. So there is a little bit of a cost breakdown, or at least a benefit for the 4-channel, especially too. This is going to help out with anybody that has to deal with rapid shutdown. So anybody knows what microinverters, they always have the rapid shutdown compliance built into it. So this knocks out 4 panels instead of having to do rapid shutdown per panel. So it really helps out in that regards. And then the max recommended input power is 600 watts, like I said, and we see a lot of panels coming out nowadays. I don't think I've seen a 600 watt just yet, but I'm sure that'll be coming soon. Peak efficiency is still about 96.5%, and the night power consumption is only about 50 milliwatts. So very, very, really, really tiny amount of consumption.
The one thing I would add to what Dustin just said is that it has a 25-year warranty.
That it does. And then just to put that in comparison with like the IQ7 and the IQ8s, especially the IQ8s, it's going to have a better cost per watt. And I was mentioning earlier, one of the biggest features that I have seen, at least for the IQ8s, is the ability to work even in the grid down situation. They'll be able to power the loads with daytime. Obviously, at nighttime, we're not going to have that abilities, but that is another feature that we are looking into adding, just a matter of time. So, yeah. And you'll see, too, we have Chilicon, which was bought by Generac. And then you also have AP Systems as well, which, is probably the most comparative to the Solark M1000 and the 2000. So we try to have a cost-effective solution. This will really help out with especially door-to-door people that really want to sell things as a package. This will allow them to have another piece of material in their repertoire to say, hey, I can give you a lower cost and a more powerful microinverter right out the gate.
Yeah, without trying to talk to anybody about the need for microinverters. Microinverters have been around for a long time. Enphase has done really, really well. They're on their IQ8 series, I guess. So microinverters definitely have a place in the ecosystem, and that's what attracted us. So from a Solark perspective, we wanted to add microinverters to our lineup and following Solarc's, doctrine and philosophy, we wanted best-in-class technology, and then we'll wrap it in world-class customer support. But we wanted best-in-class technology micros that are compatible with the rest of our gear, our smart load panels and our hybrid inverters, so that an installer looking at a business or a home can create the system that that homeowner needs or the business needs. I don't know what they need. You take each one. It's a standalone analysis as far as I'm concerned. What are you trying to run? What's your load? What are your hours? When are you going to run it? What kind of weather are you in? What are the local threats? All of these things kind of come into play when designing a system. We don't design systems. We know how to do it, and we've done a lot of it, but the installers do. Renee does. Her team does. So all we are in the position at Solarc is supplying them with best-in-class technology and world-class customer support. We're super happy about these two lines of microinverters. It just enables Solarc to say yes to just about anything. You want 14 kilowatts of PV. Oh, you want to add 3 more kilowatts and throw some micros on there just for military grade? You want to expand a system? Let's say you already had a system and it's already tied into a Solarc. Well, we can AC couple and DC couple at the same time. So throw some more panels up there, put some micros on it, pop the AC side, and bam, you just expanded your system.
Yep.
Again, we want to put together a solution package to where we can say yes to just about anything.
Just a question on the microinverters. Are we using that in conjunction with the solar?
You can.
You can.
So
So if we're using it with a battery?
So with the 12K, one of the things is you can do up to 9,600 watts of AC coupling. You could, in a perfect world, what you could do, it's a combination of 16 kilowatts, I believe. So in a perfect world, you could do like 12 kilowatts of DC and 4 kilowatts of AC coupling. And that's actually going to give you about 13 kilowatts of AC output altogether. So you're getting the AC output from the micros, but you're also getting the AC output from the inverter itself. So if you need that extra AC output and you are limited to the amount of space or limited to the amount of budget, things like that, then you can add micros to increase your AC output capabilities.
So with the 12K, so you're then bringing it effectively from the 9 kilowatts of
to 24 kilowatts on the 15K. Yep.
Yeah, you can AC couple up to 24 kW to the 50.
So obviously there's a little bit of a combination. I want to say that's going through its processes right now. So to see what that kind of perfect combination is, because again, we're limited to what we can do because there's a lot of moving parts, obviously. But once we get that combination, and we'll lay it out in the manual just like we do with the 12K, and then you can do what you have to do.
Just to be real clear, these are not hybrid microinverters, right? So you still need a hybrid inverter to manage the batteries. These are string inverters that are micro inverters that can, and you can either use them standalone, or you can use them in conjunction with a system expansion, any way you want. But to truly be operational off-grid with energy storage, you need a hybrid inverter. Yes.
You want to
Yeah, what you're looking at here is a retail breakdown, right? So on the top left corner, what you have is a Solarc 12K and 19.2 kilowatt hours of our favorite home grid battery. And any battery, but assuming there's your cost. And so you have the ESS total, and then you have the watts associated with it, the AC watts. We always look at watts in terms of AC because that's kind of the load side. So let's stick with reality on that. And you can see it's $18,222. You got 9,000 watts, $2.02, is your cost per watt. If you go past the black box there, we take a look at kind of indicative installer pricing over on the side, just to kind of give you a glimpse of what that would look like. So then right underneath that, you have the 15K and the same amount of batteries, 19.2 kWh. So that comes to $18,972. Which now lowers the price per watt to $1.58. Now, if you take a Solarc M2000 Micro, it's 2,000 watts, $558 retail pricing. It's 28 cents. If you take the Smart Load 14, same thing, 20,000 watts, $2,500. It's 13 cents. So what we keep doing is the micros represent an ability to add to the system, expand to the system. There's a few different ways you can use the micros, but it lowers the overall cost per watt. You can use the Smart Load 14. It lowers the overall cost per watt. we packed all kinds of functionality and speed into the 15K that lowers the price per watt. So everything you see on this slide, we're about lowering the price per watt. If you get down to the bottom part of the tab there, you can see the same thing. It's different lines where you got the 12 kilowatt inverter plus batteries. You got a 12 kilowatt inverter plus some micros. You got the M1000s. You got a 12 kilowatt plus some energy storage plus the M2000s. And then underneath that, we run through the same scenario with the 15K. The 15K plus energy storage, and then the 15K plus energy storage, plus a couple of the different micro ones. The long and the skinny of this is, for everybody listening, we beat the crap out of this stuff. We beat it up. We add up the watts. We add up the price. We add up what we can do. And we're all about doing the math to continually drive down the cost of energy storage. We're Texans. We like to keep it simple. So if you go all the way back to our mission statement, which I think was slide number 2, we're about reliable, affordable, energy storage for everybody. And so we continually beat up the math on what do we got, what do they got, where are we going to price ours, where are we going to put ours. And our goal in life is to make energy storage affordable for all. And so that's the mission we're on. And, we just keep hammering it, and we're super happy to be launching these new products.
Yeah, so really kind of looking at the high performance, medium cost / performance, and then low cost. So here it just kind of gives you a breakdown of really just like the SolArc 15K, and then you have like the Enphase InCharge unit, which obviously is probably the most comparable considering it's an entire home transfer switch. So here it just kind of breaks down. Again, it's kind of a Christmas tree chart. We like to use green and red for anything leading. Red is usually for anything kind of lacking in that regards. So 7-day-a-week tech support, obviously you'll see that is a yes across all boards, regardless of the size of the project. However, we have heard, at least lately, a lot of our competitors are looking at about a 2-week lead time for either scheduling or really anything as far as support. We have a 7-day-a-week team. I mean, I could show y'all our chat over Saturday and Sunday these last few days, and it's one of those deals we're always working, we're always busting. We have a really great department for support guys, Bob and Devin, which haven't really gone over, but Bob and Devin are our 2 guys that lead the support team. If there's nothing that I can help with, they'll be more than happy to take care of you with. They'll help you out really, obviously getting and making sure everything is set appropriately for what you're wanting to do.
And real quick on that, Bob and Devin's team, how many they got? Maybe 10, 12 so far?
No, I think it's I think it's around 15 to 18.
So they have 15, and then how many were in the new class?
We had to break up the new class into 2 different classes just for scheduling purposes, but overall there's about, I think, 23 overall.
So my point here, Bob and Devin's team is 15 people. That's our support team that talks to the whole world 7 days a week. And we just hired 20, 22, 24 new people.
20.
As Dustin was saying, we broke that class into 2 so we could handle training and whatnot. We're growing at SolArc. We're hiring at SolArc, and we're adding to that support team. We launch all these new products. We're going out here on a road show, talking to great teams like Ego Direct and so forth. We anticipate these new products coming out of the chute like a bull, Texas style. And so we're ready to ride.
Yeah. So just kind of keep looking at here. So we have the peak off-grid kind of current capabilities. So we saw earlier on the 12K, it was about 67 amps. On the 15K, it's going to be about 100 amps. So that comparatively to, obviously in the medium cost, you do have the 12K still at 67. Obviously light years ahead of other competitors. Just again, we'd like to make sure we can start those really large appliances. The 15 kilowatts, at least in the high performance, again, we can break through the coals multiple times for the name. So we did take that to heart and really wanted to make sure that the 15K was, output was 15 kilowatts. And then, comparatively, you do have Enphase that does exceed that in the, in the medium cost / performance. However, you are limited to, I believe, the battery you can use. You can only use their battery. Where with the 12K, you can use any, 48 volt based battery. Obviously, we have some closed loop communications with some, and, as we add different chemistries and things like that, the cost and everything could be a little bit better for your project. Same thing. Power battery on and off grids, 12 kilowatts. So I do want to at least make that point at least a few more times, is off grid battery only. The 15K is limited to 12 kilowatts. So that is the only difference per se, but with battery and PV together, it is 15 kilowatts. You'll see too in the medium cost, you'll have like 7.7 kilowatts for the in phase versus 9 kilowatts for the 12K. And then obviously too, you have the in phase versus Outback. They have their own kind of respective there. The battery, 16 years LFP, pretty standard all across the board, except for Outback. They do use NMC. Charging battery from generator, we offer that right out the gate versus the other products on this list. They do not. So it really helps out there to have that third source of power. Charging PV to battery to AC efficiency is one of the ones that stands out the most. So again, this allows you not to have to oversize the project to beat those inefficiencies. We're only about a 7% loss versus 12 to 15% versus our competitors. Again, customer satisfaction here, we're showing 5 stars at 96 reviews. We're currently at 130. So we appreciate any customers that have done that because those are organic. We don't necessarily, ask anybody to do that. We only recommend that they do it just because it gives us an understanding of what they're looking for. And we've had some times where somebody's put in a 1-star review and we've actually worked together with them. I've actually done it personally, and they changed the review after we got it resolved. So again, we always take those reviews seriously. We always, obviously first world-class support is always something we try to push. So if you are unsatisfied, actually in all the years I've been here and all the years that SolarArc's been around, we've never had one person return the unit to us. So we've never had anybody say, nope, can't work with you, can't do this. We've always found a solution in the long run. So really, really awesome in that regards as it, goes along with our mission statement. Installer and retail price, obviously a little bit of breakdown. So we try to give as much, leverage there for the installer to make some money. The retail price is, always going to be changing, obviously in today's day and age with shortages and things like that, we try to be as consistent. That will probably be set in stone, I believe, soon as far as all of the pricing.
Yeah, we'll be announced right after the result.
Okay. And then total retail price per watt AC daytime obviously gives us a little bit of an overview. We're about $1.62 for the 15K, about $1.49 for 3 of the in charges. So obviously, again, really saves on space if you're limited. And then obviously in the medium cost to the performance one, you're looking at the 12K, which is about $1.73. But you're also looking at 2 of the in charges. Again, really saves in space. And then you have the low cost, which is going to be the in phase versus the Outback. The assumptions, really, you have 7.6 plus 50 cents per watt hour and then 40 panels. Really, that's just a basic overview. Obviously, this can be scaled differently. In phase, you're looking at about 40 panels, 30 panels on the medium cost, and 6.9 for plus 50 watt hour per watt hour on the SolarArc 12K. So again, all of this can be scaled. This is just giving you kind of a basic overview of what it could look like. I always try to look at it from the scope of every project is different. So everybody's got a different budget. So obviously we try to scale it to what they need, and we can package it as much as we can. At the end of the day, though, we do have these 2 SolarArc models. We have the limit of the 15K, which is the one we just discussed, and then we also have the Smart Loads 14, which is also going to be a mind of its own. Because again, I do want to point out that it is agnostic in the sense that you don't have to use the SolarArc. You could use any other product on the market. So it's going to be in a league of its own. So yeah.
That we talked about earlier.
That's it.
Yeah. That's it. We do have some questions there. If anybody, Justin, there was one question here, which I was looking at.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for everybody who's online and has been participating with us. We have answered some of the questions that are in the chat, and Dustin is looking at a question that's in the chat right now. So if you have any questions and you want to chat, is everybody's microphone off?
Yes.
Well,
they're in listen mode. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to flip them on, see if anybody wants to chat with us?
Sure.
We are going to turn on everybody's microphone. So give us a moment. It takes a couple seconds to do that on our end. And then if you have anything you'd like to say or any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You got on our end, there's a room full of folks. We had Team Home Grid joined us about halfway through. So We actually have some battery guys in here from Lithion, and we have Team Eco Direct, and we have Dustin and myself from Solark.
Is my volume on? Okay, cool.
If you, the way you handle the settings on your end is the lower left corner, I believe, and you can kind of manipulate your microphone there. But we do, on our end, we do have all the microphones turned on. So it might take a digital moment here, but we'd love to hear from you. You got any questions or comments?
Hi, this is Joe Claire. Are you talking to me?
Joseph?
Yeah. Are you
Yeah.
talking to me?
Just don't know. Is the volume up on the?
On the TV?
Oh, I don't.
Joseph, you got a hot mic. How you doing?
Good. How are you? So a question that I have is, are you recording the session
we
that
have
I
it.
can?
Try that again, Joseph, if you don't mind.
Thanks. I was joining late here. I missed a lot of the conversation. Is it recorded where I can view it later?
Yeah. This training will be. It was recorded. It started as soon as we did it. So as if you share some information or through the sign up process, it should have asked you for an email. If you shared the email with us, we can share the recording with you. Not a problem.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Joseph. We'll make sure you get a copy of that.
Yes, thank you.
And I have a cool question.
Yeah.
Fire away. Renee Donaldson's got some questions. And I'm sure she's got good ones.
So there's, in some of these we kind of briefly touched over, but a couple of them we didn't, and I decided it'd be a good time to ask it here too.
Sure.
So as far as integrating wind within a solar system, I've had some of our customers say that they swear up and down they've talked to somebody over at Solar, and I thought that I had asked, it was a while ago, but hey, do not use other charging sources besides solar. I'm like, okay, no problem. And they say, nope, they said it's okay. So what is it?
Yeah. So when looking at wind, right now, so there was a time when we were looking at using a dynamic windbreak inside the unit. That project has been spun up lately. It was put on the back burner just because we were coming out with all of these different items. The only way of doing it now, at least currently with all of our units, is to use a charge controller directly to the batteries. And then you would set with a dump load, obviously, so that way we're not overcharging the batteries. But what that allows the system to do is it very similar. It similarly acts like a generator in a sense. So as it sends power to the batteries, we will then just pull power from the batteries to help power the loads. There is not a way to directly connect wind to the MPPTs at this time, just because, again, we do not have that dynamic windbreak. So if something goes wrong, or if the motor or the wind turbine doesn't necessarily slow down in time, it's not going to damage the unit. As we develop a dynamic windbreak and things like that, we'll have that easier capabilities. I don't have any information on when that's available because, again, that project is being spun up, pun intended. So it's one of those deals where we're looking at it just because we do understand, especially being out in Texas. I grew up in West Texas, so if you look really outside your back door, you're going to see wind farms for days. So as we look at different options, and especially with wind turbines becoming more powerful, more efficient, things like that, we want to be able to integrate that into the system a lot easier. But right now, it's directly to the batteries using a charge controller and a dump load.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
But it is a popular question. And to me, it tells me that wind seems to be moving its way downstream a little bit into the residential space and the light commercial space. The big wind turbines that Dustin's describing, voltages beyond us, feed the grid directly. But we hear a lot about the integration with wind turbines, which tells me, that they're coming out with 5 kilowatt out, 10 kilowatt models, the home style sizes. But it's popular.
Yeah, I mean, we're using a lot of, so Primus is one of the
Mhm.
manufacturers that we use a lot. So they're not that large, as far as like their KW size, about a 400 watt. They're about,
Oh, okay.
but you can parallel them and you would directly connect them to a battery bank. And so I'm glad that you brought up having a dump load there because I think that's going to have to, that is part of it.
It's a
They can
must.
always-
Yeah, a dump load is a must just because again, I mean, the wind it's always going to be producing. If the wind's blowing, it's going to be producing power. So the dump load allows you to at least push it off to basically a giant resistor. Basically, is what it is. That'll just consume that power, so we're not overcharging the batteries because again, that's where the charge controller comes into play and says, hey, we can only go up to this height, and then we let the solar do the rest. as far as
From a system standpoint, like redundancy, I love it, right? I mean, we're all about, so if you have PV and you have the home, your load, and you have a solar, and you have some batteries, and you have a generator, the PV represents the ability to create electricity from free fuel, right? Free fuel, that's how we win, free fuel. And so that's awesome. 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. only, maybe, depending on how cloudy it is. But if you add a turbine or a couple of these little turbines, 2 or 3, add 3 of them, you get 1.2 kW or something like that. Those things spin at night. They also have free fuel. You don't need diesel, propane. You don't need to pipe in natural gas, none of that stuff. It's free fuel from Mother Nature. So I like it. I mean, I would want all of the above. I want a little generator. I want the solar. I want the batteries, and I want the wind turbine. Because if my batteries start dying at 2:30 in the morning and the grid's down, but it's a windy night, then you got a fighting chance. You got a source of electron generation from free fuel that you can hook up to the system. So it is a popular request. We are working on it, and I would say, stay tuned for more functionality.
Well, one of the things, and to that point is too, we've seen a lot, especially I've talked to a couple of people up in Northern California, where they're having a lot of noise ordinances for generators. Also, too, I've also heard that generators in general, at least for residentials, are starting to go away. They're not even allowing you to use them anymore, just for fuels and things like that. So with that being kept in mind, if you're not allowed to run your generator only whenever it's in an off-grid mode, at least you would have, and you have a cloudy day or something like that, you at least have the wind turbine that obviously doesn't produce noise. It's not going to put off any fuel, or it's not going to put out any CO2 or anything like that. And 2, you're going to get that extra production going to the batteries. So obviously we do see a lot of not just, benefits electronically, but you also see a lot of, legislation as well that's going to be preventative in the sense of you're limited to what you can use.
And I would add to that one last thing is that I view the solar and the wind as being very complementary. The solar works during the daytime. The wind can work during the daytime, but it can also work at night. Well, what typically happens when the grid's down? Well, a lot of times it's a storm. Well, what's the sun doing when it's stormy? Not so much, What's the wind doing when it's stormy? Rocking and rolling, right? Yeah. So again, they're kind of, if it's stormy and it took down the grid and you're not getting much sun power, do you want a turbine? Heck yeah, dude, because the wind's blowing like crazy and I still got a fighting chance with free fuel. So a lot of what we're trying to put together is complementary. The whole wind thing for us, market driven. The market talks to us. Here's what we want. Here's what we like. Here's what we'd love to see. And we try to bring that back to them in the way of functionality. So that's a work in process, but you're hitting the nail right on the head with a popular request.
Especially with legislation, and California always seems to be a leader in that regards. They always seem to pass something and then it ventures off in every other state. So as that becomes hopefully less popular, and at least I hope that happens that way, but generators will probably be out the door just because of the CO2 and carbon stuff that they put off. So wind turbines are going to be the next filler, at least in that regards.
Yeah, I heard Houston, Texas is now requiring all new houses to be solar ready. And I'm like, where did they get that from? So that's cool. One city adopting, just as Dustin said, kind of, so what starts in California. We have a thing at the University of Texas where I'm from, and you'll see it on all the ads they play during the football games. So the University of Texas, what starts here changes the world. It's California, right? In California, what starts here changes the world.
Yep.
So we like. Well, a lot of times we like the policy. Sometimes we don't like the policy. Yeah. I hope you guys keep that meter. That's a big one.
Me too.
We'll see.
do you have more questions for that?
I do have another one. Since HomeGrid is here, glad that you guys were able to make it. I figure I'd like to put a question to you all, Solar and HomeGrid.
Sure.
So closed loop versus open loop. As far as it goes, for all of us, just on just sizing design, how important is it for functionality with your inverters and from what you've seen from an application perspective?
I can answer that one. So basically what it's doing is monitoring at the cellular level. So each module has, we have 15 different cells in there. So the efficiencies go up significantly. Is it hypercritical? No. But it does, it's a much more efficient system all around.
Yeah, and from a solar perspective, we know that the HomeGrid or, insert other battery company, but for now we'll stick with HomeGrid. They are the chemistry guys. They build the cells, they build the battery, and they have all the routine to optimize that, that's integrated into their BMS. So without full comms, we look at the battery and we're like, okay, state of charge, electrons in, electrons out. We can do some basic things if we do not have full comms. But when we do have full comms, we do a proper handshake with their battery management system that lets the battery management system do its thing inside that battery to optimize the performance of that battery. So you want it. I mean, how critical is it? I don't know. It works without it just fine. It works better with it. And the word is really optimization. So as Spencer just said, they look very carefully at all the cells and they're running software to keep the battery running at optimal performance. Well, we want that to go, unhindered, I guess is the right word, right? We don't want to get in the way of that. We want to let it do its thing and then just have it talk to the inverter to where we get the full power of their BMS. If we don't have full comms, it's like we're not getting the full power of their BMS. We just look at the battery in kind of a dumb way, caveman thinking, state of charge, up, down, add electrons, yes, no, okay, fine. But that's just it, really. It's just the basic functionality versus their algorithms, which are really designed to optimize the performance of the battery as a unit.
And you
Does that
can
make sense?
utilize the full capacity of the battery, right? When you're looking at capacity measurements and different drop-off per state of charge, especially when you're looking at lithium iron phosphate and the way that that's measured. Our technology has the capability to provide that more accurately than without communications with the inverter. So you're just getting, improved, like you can use the full capacity of the battery without the solar potentially thinking that it's already used up.
And to that point, I mean, especially with LFP in general, there's such a minute differences between state of charge and what the voltages is. So looking from a customer's perspective, they always want to see SOC. They don't really want to look at the voltages. So getting that information directly from the battery, we're going to be able to give them a more accurate representation of what the battery is at. Just because, again, you could be at 54 to 52, but that could be a range from, 100% to 60%. So it's very, very minute differences between voltages and SOC that we just want to be as accurate as possible with the SOC. Yeah.
Is it required? Is one of the other required or recommended to be used with a smart loads panel?
It's not required. The system itself has built-in algorithms. We do use Coulomb counting, at least for our amp hour, kind of configuration. So we already have a built-in way of tracking the amp hours, but at least with the closed loop communications, that information is always going to be populated and up to date with how many cycles it's been going through, what the state of charge is, what voltage each cell is at, all that kind of stuff.
But the answer, the direct answer to the question, smart load doesn't care. So, it'll operate under any circumstances, but, kind of as we're describing, you're going to get better performance out of the battery if you have it in full comms with the inverter and then the smart load.
Okay,
But the smart load is just the smart load device. It doesn't care what any other settings are around it.
Okay, and it wouldn't affect like the AI
Well,
programming?
it will. Yes, it's going to, because again, it's if you don't have closed loop communication, if that information is not accurate, the AI is not going to be able to tell you, say, hey, you need to use this settings. It's going to base it off of whatever information it's running off of.
So that's a good point, Renee. The AI function of the smart load, I would think, in my opinion, puts a little more criticality on having full comms.
Well, and to be quite honest, and this is probably just a question for y'all in general, but are y'all seeing a lot of people use lead acid batteries nowadays, or is it mainly LFP lithium based in general? Because I feel like that's where the market at least is going.
It's mainly lithium. There's some that are off-brand products.
Mhm.
They're finding in various places that do not have closed loop communication currently established with some of the inverters.
Mhm.
There's a lot of customers. We put out kind of a myth buster, because we have some customers that were taking 12-volt lithium batteries and wiring them up in series
Mhm.
for 48 volts and then paralleling them.
Yep.
And we put it out an article that said, hey, this is why you don't do that. But there's a lot of things like that that do come up that we hear about. And so having the open loop versus closed loop is one of them. And we find that the majority of our customers will listen to our direction.
Sure.
And so they're getting the right components for their systems.
Mhm.
But there is a section that kind of just
Do what they
go,
want.
yeah, they go wild. It's like the Wild
Well-
West, where they're just, getting anything that they're getting usually a less expensive solution versus what they should actually.
As you're getting those inquiries, let us know, because we do have about 2 BMSs that we've gone through testing ourselves. So at least in the long run, if they do decide to build or DIY their own battery bank, we can at least tell you, say, hey, use this BMS or use this BMS. So it's that way in the long run, they can always format it to where it'll still have closed loop communications, even though it was a DIY battery. So more than happy to do that. We've obviously gone through a lot of BMSs just to verify, and a lot of these manufacturers have their own BMSs kind of designed. So the first 2 that I could pop off the top of my head is Batrium and Orion. Both of those are both fully customizable in the sense that you can use it to 16S or 15S, whatever. So if you do have a DIY battery system that somebody just wants to do it themselves, by all means go for it. But at least we can give you a suggestion on the BMS to use, so that way they'll have that capabilities if necessary.
Okay.
That was my question, is what do they use? Or if they
Yeah.
don't do a closed loop communication, like, where do they buy it? What
Well, you'll
do
just
they
have,
buy?
most of the
What
time they'll
data?
just have a BMS, but at least we'll have the protocols already preset in our system, so they can have closed loop.
Yeah, and this whole issue is one of the reasons that Solark worked hard to locate good battery companies and kind of vet them out, work collaboratively with them. We've got 20 that we have full comms established with. We want to give the marketplace as many choices as we can. New battery company pops up tomorrow and starts getting some traction in the marketplace. We typically find them, call them and say, hey, we're in Plano, Texas, ship us a battery, we'll ship an inverter. Let's get your lab going and our lab going and establish full comms.
Well, especially with different ULs coming out. I mean, I'm sure everybody here has heard of UL 9540. That's probably going to be something that's a must nowadays, not necessarily a need. So as we see different battery manufacturers and they're going through that process, we always try to support them, because you do go through that testing with an inverter. You don't just test the battery itself. So we are going through that process with a lot of these. And I will say, if my memory serves me correctly, we have about 16 other battery manufacturers in our lab right now that we're doing testing on. So we're going to add more to that list soon.
Yeah, the battery thing for Solark's an ongoing.
It's never
We're
ending.
just constant. But we maintain our neutrality. I mean, we think it's a strength to the home and business owners of America that we're not boxing you into anything. Another thing is chemistry. So there's a lot of money in research and development in the battery space right now, energy storage. I mean, a lot of money. There's a whole bunch of really smart MIT grads working on stuff. You got urea batteries, you got salt batteries, you got aqueous batteries. I'm trying to make it out of water,
Flow batteries.
mammal urine. I mean, we're thinking produce electricity. No, the urea stuff is actually exciting. You laugh, but it's exciting. Somebody's going to crack the nut that really has a good power density and a good form factor, and the cost is half of what it is now. And when that happens, we're going to be poised to just say, hey, great, you got a new battery that works twice as good as everybody else. How quickly can we get full comms?
Yeah.
Let's go. So we maintain kind of a position of readiness that we're not really boxed into anything. Somebody comes out with a cool new battery chemistry next week, we're like, let's get that thing to 48 volts and go.
Well, and
So
just in terms of the market too, I mean, Duracell just came out with a LFP solution for residential. I mean, they've sold little things for remote controls and things like that, but they're now moving into the residential solar market.
how many weeks is it going to be before you see the Energizer buddy?
Yeah.
Whole home backup.
Yep.
It's coming.
It's a matter of time.
If Duracell did it, Energizer's right behind it.
Yeah. So Any other questions? Anybody else? Those have been awesome questions.
Yeah, well, again, thank you very much to everybody who's attending this webinar online. We appreciate you a lot. We do have a recording. Renee's team will probably have the recording and do the website, newsletter, and different stuff with it. We'll probably do the same on the SolarArc side. So we think either from ecodirect.com or solararc.com, we should make this available. We do have everybody's email address. We'll push it out to you as well. If you have any follow-up questions, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much. We appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.